Question is, I have always wondered why I ache more during my deload week. It doesn't even need to be after an entire block of training. My back tends to ache more a few days into the deload than it ever does during my training weeks. I have more nagging, aching, and pains as well. So, basically, why might someone be experiencing more physical discomfort during deload weeks than, when they're actually like actively training pretty hard? So the explanation that I've heard for this, so one thing just to note on the front end, I've not seen like direct human research on this. So we're purely in the realm of anecdote and kind of looking around for potential explanatory mechanisms. So anyone who is answering this question with a super high degree of confidence, either they're aware of research that I was unable to find, or they're just kind of bullshitting. So just be aware of that on the front end. And I am going to do my best to not bullshit you with this answer. But yeah, so the explanation that I've heard from other sources before is that when you're training hard, you're putting stressors on your body. And as a result, your sympathetic nervous system output ramps up. And along with that comes increases in catecholamine levels. So epinephrine, norepinephrine, basically adrenaline. And those chemicals can, to some degree, like numb pain or discomfort responses. Like, I'm sure you've heard anecdotes from like athletes who maybe have a rolled ankle, but, they put on an ankle brace and get on the court. And, they just forget that they've injured their ankle while they're actually playing. And then they get off the court and like they're limping all over the place. Like the pain comes back. And so, maybe that's just purely due to adrenaline. And I don't know that I fully buy that explanation for a couple of reasons. One is that it is true that when you're putting a lot of stressors on your body, even when you're not necessarily, actively exercising, your base, like your catecholamine levels at rest could still be elevated to some degree. So if you track HRV, for example, heart rate variability, that's one of those things that it's roughly trying to assess. If you have low heart rate variability, even at rest, that means your sympathetic nervous system, even at rest, is ramped up a little bit. So, that dynamic is in play, but I think that the level of sympathetic nervous system output and the level of adrenaline you need to like pretty significantly numb pain is quite a bit higher than it would be at rest, even if it is somewhat elevated from baseline. So when you're actually training, you might get a pretty intense analgesic response, like a pain reducing response from some of those chemicals. But even if they are slightly elevated at rest, I don't know that it would be enough to be physiologically relevant for like numbing pain and discomfort. And another reason that I'm somewhat skeptical of that explanation is there are other things that you can do that can ramp up catecholamine output that also have a tendency to simultaneously increase pain perception. So for example, after just like one or two like very poor or very short nights of sleep, sympathetic nervous system activity will ramp up while you're awake, basically just to try to keep you awake and alert, even though you're poorly rested. And inadequate sleep also tends to be associated with increased pain perception. So there are other things that have a similar effect on the sympathetic nervous system as a training block would, that would tend to increase pain perception rather than decrease it. So, that is a set of physiological mechanisms that may be related to this phenomenon to some degree, but I'm skeptical that it fully explains it. One other possibility is just that, maybe you ache more because you're moving less overall. So in kind of like the pain and physical rehab literature, one of the things that you see pretty consistently is that just exercise in general has a pretty robust and consistent general analgesic effect. Or in other words, like if you move more, you tend to hurt less. Just, not in all conceivable situations and all conceivable things that might be causing pain. But in general, if you're very sedentary, or if your activity levels decrease quite a bit, that could make you hurt a little bit more. And if you're a little bit more active, you tend to just be in a little bit less discomfort. So that could be all that's going on. Like it's your deload week, so you're taking it easier in the gym, and maybe as a result, like, or even purposefully, one of the things people will often do when they're deloading is they just try to take it easy in general. Like the idea being, I'm trying to rest, I'm trying to recuperate. So I'm not going to go out of my way to be active, or I might even go out of my way to be a bit of a couch potato this week to really, let myself fully recuperate from this training block I just did. So, that could just be the dynamic at play. Like your overall activity levels are lower. And as a result, the general levels of discomfort you feel are a bit higher. So that's another potential explanation. Again, I don't think that would be a complete explanation of this phenomenon, but that could be another input in play. Um, and then another potential explanation is it could just be a matter of your brain basically filtering the inputs coming to it and kind of giving primacy to whatever the most intense input is. So that was a very bad just introduction to this explanation. But basically, like you're training hard, maybe you're experiencing some pretty intense or, at least like moderate DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness. So, it could be that those sensations like maybe a little back pain, maybe some joint aches or whatever, like maybe those things are there all the time, but there's kind of a finite amount of stuff that your brain can make you aware of. Like your conscious mind is limited in terms of like how much you can perceive and process all at once. And so it could just be a matter of like, your brain is trying to send you what it perceives to be the most relevant information. And so, it makes you aware of pain and discomfort. And so it could just be that you're experiencing enough muscle soreness when you're training hard that those kind of like lower level discomfort signals that are getting to your brain aren't intense enough to kind of get pushed into your conscious perception. And then once you remove some of those other like dis- uncomfortable sensations as a result of training, then maybe some more of that low level stuff is now, the most intense discomfort you're feeling. And so your brain just kind of pushes that into your conscious awareness. So that could be what's going on as well. All of which is to say, I think of those three things I mentioned, all of them could be contributing, none of them could be contributing. It's hard to say. We don't know for sure. So just generally interpret that as food for thought.